Hi, and welcome to the Art Splash podcast, where we will have open and playful and also meaningful and thought-provoking conversations about art, creativity, life and spirituality. Hi, and I'm Joy Fahey.
And I'm Eve Marie Whitsun-Jones.
And welcome to our podcast. And we've got an interesting subject today on who are you painting for? It's kind of such an interesting subject to to discuss because quite a few people say they don't want to show their paintings, and they don't know quite what direction they're going in with their paintings. So it's an interesting subject. So how about you, Eve? How do you feel?
Well, I think I started this thought about what this topic we're going to discuss today because I saw a headline for a video, a discussion about fine art versus decorative art. And it got me thinking about how do we define what we're doing, and how do we think of the art that we're doing? Are we thinking of it as fine art, which would be something that potentially could be sold in a gallery, or to a collector, or passed down into our family as a sort of a family heirloom, versus something that we paint just to put on our walls to make our rooms look bright and cheerful and pretty. And it really has no other value than just to brighten up your space, which isn't to say that that's not an important thing to do, obviously. But it does have a whole different meaning to it, doesn't it?
Yes, it does. I mean, and obviously most people, I would say, are hobby artists. They paint because they enjoy it, not necessarily that they want to be in, the MoMA or the Royal Academy.
Yeah.
And I think it's an interesting question to ask yourself, because we want to develop it. The whole thing is developing skills and confidence and new techniques, and to feel some continuity between ourselves and our painting. And then where do we want it to go?
Yeah.
So then, okay, well, let me ask you, where do you want your painting to go?
Well, initially, I think my reasoning for starting painting was to have something to hang on my walls that when I walked by and I looked at it, it made me feel happy, or it made me feel like I was, how shall I say, it gave me a sense of satisfaction, a sense of accomplishment, pride, knowing that I've done something that pleases me, and also at the same time, I would hope pleases other people who come into my house and look at it. Yeah. But then there's a concept of, are you painting the piece to fit into a room, to fit with the room, or are you painting a piece and making the room fit around it? So that was one of the other sort of different perspectives that I think artists take when they're painting something. Like your art, for example, you're just doing it out of your inspiration and your imagination and your creativity. You're not painting it to fit into a particular space.
No. And I think that's the difference, really, and but actually at the same time, I do think you can combine both.
Oh, absolutely. It's not either or.
But I think if I cast my mind back to when I first started painting in, properly in my early 20s, then I think it was a feeling of self-satisfaction that I'd achieved something. And I felt that it looked lovely. In fact, funnily enough, I've been clearing out my studio this week. I've bought a new shelving unit, which is great.
Oh.
But I came across one of my very first watercolor paintings that I was really pleased with. And I guess that feeling of satisfaction that I had actually put something on paper that I really liked and that fulfilled the need in me to paint. I mean, I didn't care whether anybody else liked it or not. I liked it, and I
Right.
felt that if I'd, as if I'd done it, you know, correctly, whatever
Yeah.
that is. But it, you know, it was a lovely painting. It was an autumn scene, and it was kind of a quite abstracted. But it was just lovely. Where I used to live, we were surrounded by a national park, so there were some beautiful views and areas to paint, which is very inspirational. And we had a very, very big oak tree, and very sadly it came down in a huge storm, but I painted it
Mhm.
before that happened. um,
Yeah.
and it was a feeling of self-satisfaction, and I think that builds on your confidence. And then when it is on the wall and then people come to your home or your house and see it and make a remark, it kind of increases your confidence to do more. And I do think ultimately, well, this is my opinion. I can't speak for anybody else. It was my sort of feeling that I wanted to put some paintings together that I felt happy with, that I could show.
Mhm.
And I think, I don't know, probably a year or maybe 2 years later, I had my first art show at the local library.
Yeah. Oh,
And I was absolutely over the moon about that. And I think I sold about 4 or 5 paintings, which was fantastic. I mean, it was all to friends and family, you know.
yeah.
But nevertheless, you know, I
Once
got
it's sold,
money for them, and I felt
yeah.
really, really cool. And I don't think they would have bought them if they didn't like them.
Oh, theoretically not. No. Yeah.
No. Um, but it's interesting because a lot of people do say they just want to paint, and they don't want to show them, and they don't necessarily even want to put them up on the wall. So
Mm-hmm.
I think that part of painting is a little bit like, maybe in my mind, um, like writing a journal. It's kind
Yeah.
of um,
Therapeutic. Yeah.
yeah, making a statement about how you feel, but instead of writing it, you're painting it. So, um, what do you feel about that?
Well, I mean, obviously there are many, many different reasons for painting, that being a very important and I think very valuable reason, that we should all do in some way, shape, or form, I think, for our own mental health,
Yeah,
if
yeah,
nothing else.
for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, 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 absolutely. And I also think, it pushes the boundaries. It makes us think, it makes us feel, it makes us kind of want to go to a new level, of learning. I think if you
Yeah.
get hooked on it, and then you look and you think, I could do something else with it, or it needs something else, or how do I achieve that? How can I get that? How can I get the paint to look this, that, or the other way? um I think that is kind of it's inherent in us, I feel, as human beings, to want to go the next step.
Yeah.
We
Well, I
crawl,
think
we
open,
walk, we run. And I think
yeah.
we all want to run, actually.
But I think in terms of so yeah, there's that very important part of it.
Hmm.
But then there are people who want to be professional artists, such as yourself,
Hmm.
and you're painting to earn a living, essentially, either through
Um,
your painting or
yeah,
through your pieces.
yeah. I mean, yes, I suppose that's one aspect of it, but it's not something that I tend to focus on. I paint the things that I feel I'd like to paint. And
Mhm.
then, I mean, I have a yearly exhibition, which is coming up in 3 weeks. Help.
Yeah. Oh,
And I like to show the work. I like to talk about it. If people are interested and they like it and they buy it, it's fantastic. Um, and obviously that sort of validates what I do in a way. Um, but my main focus isn't necessarily on painting to sell, because
Okay.
it would go into sort of a commercial space if that was the case.
It's like what do you mean?
Well, I mean, I can paint sort of commercial type paintings, but that isn't necessarily aligned with me as what I want to paint. So that's an interesting thing. I mean, you know, decorative art for interior designers and that kind of thing, which I have done in the past. I used to do quite a lot of, because I was with a gallery that was linked with a number of interior designers. And the owner would say, right, we've got this scheme coming up. We want these colors, we want this size, and we want
Right.
something
Yeah.
on the wall. So for a period of time, I was doing those kind of things, but it wasn't about, I mean, obviously it had something about me in it,
Yeah. You have to.
naturally,
Yeah.
but I had a brief and I had to follow the brief. So I couldn't
Mhm.
just do what I felt like doing and be expressive and do crazy stuff, because it had to fit in with the scheme. And I did that for a while, and then I thought, I don't want to carry on doing this, because it's not authentic. It's not for me. There are some
Yeah.
artists that it
Yeah.
is, and I know some of them that are extremely successful, and they do, you know, a huge amount for interior designers with, you know, big canvases and all that kind of stuff, and that's fantastic. But it's not where my heart is for my painting. My painting is about me personally and my
Yeah.
feeling. If somebody buys that, they're buying something of my
You.
feeling, me, yeah, not just like a piece of furniture that they like.
Yeah. Yeah, well, definitely. So this is where, that line gets drawn between fine art and decorative art, which is
Yes, yeah.
described, something that you
Mm,
would potentially hang, in an office, in any kind of
yeah,
a commercial establishment. And yeah, I mean, it sounds strange, but it was only kind of something I discovered in the last week or so, where I came across someone wrote an article about, becoming a professional artist and producing pieces just as you described, for these kinds of
mm,
purposes, where you're decorating a house, could be a house, could be a business, could be anything. And you are given some
yeah,
specific and color schemes and so on to work with.
mm,
And obviously it is a way of making money, producing those pieces, which is,
yeah.
yeah,
I
yeah,
mean, and I do think, you know, it's a very hard thing for me to process in a way, because I guess that if I was a really, I mean, I don't know, it's hard. It's hard to describe. But I mean, having gone to the Pompidou in Malaga last week and looking at modern
yeah.
art, it does beg the question. I mean, how many of those paintings that we saw would you ever consider having in your house? I mean,
Mm,
I don't
I
think
can't,
any.
no, yeah,
I mean,
nothing that pops.
no, I mean, you know, the Amiro, yes,
Yeah,
okay. The Matisse, yeah,
yeah,
okay. But out of probably what, 100 paintings,
right.
there was probably three or four that you felt you could relate to, that you'd feel proud to have on your wall. But I would say, I don't know, 90% of it, um, well, you just wouldn't.
Well, I mean, you say that someone who bought, someone who was a collector and wanted to buy a piece of fine art from a renowned artist, is more buying the artist's piece because of the artists themselves,
Mm,
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's lovely to think that, Matisse in your living room or wherever, but are you telling people I just bought a painting of a landscape by some guy named Matisse, or I bought a Matisse? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's the person, it's the artist that you're really acquiring in a way, as opposed to the
Yeah, I
actual.
mean, it's so subjective. You know, when you watch a lot of the programs on contemporary art and see many of the exhibitions and the art fairs, and you know, some of the work is absolutely stunningly beautiful, and some of it is stunningly terrible, in my opinion.
No,
Um,
I know, yeah.
but it's a trend, and I think I think it's more about, you know, your commercial expertise, marketing yourself. It's like everything. If it's marketed correctly and it gathers momentum because of the name,
Right.
then, you know, you're on to a winner. You could paint anything. I mean, you know, just looking at, you know, thinking about Picasso, I mean, you know, his scribble drawings out of his sketchbooks go for thousands.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, I don't think
Yeah.
my scribble
Point
drawings
made. Yeah.
would even, you know, get a
Yeah.
penny.
No. I mean, I was
And
sent
that,
to research to an auction, for, because I was curious, who are the contemporary artists, if that's the right term, contemporary or modern, or, of today, who are being recognized and followed and collected, and what
mm,
kind of works they're doing. And so
mm,
I was looking at some of the pieces in this auction, and almost every single one of them was not very appealing to me at all, and completely defied any of the principles that you taught us last week.
great.
Yeah, there's no focal point in this. There's no contrast. There's no, there's no
Well,
movement. There's,
yeah, I mean, you
yeah,
know, then you have to, it's such a deep subject, you know, expressionism or contemporary or, you know, to tell you the truth, I don't dive into it that much in order to know that much in that sense about the commercial side of things. You know, maybe if I was in my early 20s and I was at art college, and you know it comes up to the end and you get your degree and you take, you know, you're in the art exhibition and you've got agents there and promoters and all that kind of thing. These days, you know, it's a
yeah,
whole different ball game.
right, yeah,
You know, when I was at that stage, I wasn't in that lane. And
mm,
I had the, you know, a small chance when I was at Manchester School of Art, but that was cut short, sadly. Um, and maybe things would have been different. But I think as a, you know, somebody who is just on my own, doing my painting, doing my teaching, um, I get tremendous satisfaction from that. And if somebody buys something, it's wonderful. I mean, it's a lovely
yeah,
feeling that somebody has liked something enough to hang on their wall. There's no two ways about it. But, you know, going back to who do we paint for, I would say for me, I probably paint for myself, really,
mm,
truthfully.
mm,
I want to explore things for myself and see where I can take it to and what I can learn and, you know, what surprises there are in store.
yeah,
And if people like that, that's great. And if they don't, it doesn't matter. You know? So,
yeah, yeah.
but I think it's
And when you,
nice to have a goal to work towards a collection of paintings, and because that pushes you to learn more, to develop more skills and techniques. And I think that's wonderful. And I love that about teaching, because some, you know, people can come and not know anything about very much, and then suddenly, you know, after a period of time they grasp it and they're starting to make some really interesting, you know, interesting paintings, which are lovely. So
yeah.
yeah.
Well, I think it's interesting to see the evolution also of an artist and, what they did 10 years ago and what they're doing today. And,
Yeah.
kind of imagine, well, even for yourself, obviously, your style has evolved and, shaped itself over the years. And I don't know, do you have a sense of where you're going? Can you sort of predict what your art might look like
Um,
in years' time?
Not really. No, I
Uh,
can't. I have more, I guess in many respects, I have more energy focused on teaching, really, and helping people and providing um, information that helps people
mhm.
properly, not just on the surface. I really want to, get across how to do things because I think if you know how to do it, then
Yes.
when you come to do it, you've got the right tools. I think it's terribly difficult if you want to do something and you don't know how to do it. And
Or that there's something you can do, that you don't even know about.
know about, yeah. I mean,
I think,
today I've been working on the new masterclass and I'm calling it the magic of color.
mm,
And really doing a deep dive into um, how color works and all the different. I mean, we touched on this a little bit in the retreat, and I've expanded on it really because I
yeah,
feel that if you have a real foundation of knowledge of your colors and what they can do and how they work, then when you come to paint, you've got those tools in your toolkit. So,
yes, yes.
just as a stupid example, really, I've got these shelves from IKEA, and I put them together myself, but I had to follow the instructions, and I did it, and
Oh
I
God.
did it, and it was absolutely fantastic, and there it is.
Oh
So,
wow. Well, that's awesome.
the same thing applies. If somebody's got the right tools and they set out
Yeah.
to do something and they know what to do, then there's a fantastic sense of satisfaction and,
Once you've done it, yeah.
happiness when it's done.
You know,
So,
a
yeah.
lot of people had a lot, couples have had divorces based on trying to put together IKEA furniture together.
Well, I can tell you when I was married, I would never have let my husband try it because it would inevitably land up in an argument. So, I like doing that myself. I liked
Yeah.
puzzling it out and doing it, and then, great. And it gives you the screwdriver, the proper thing, and all the right
Yeah.
size nails and, screws and da-di-da.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it was
I
great.
I heard a really interesting story today about a science experiment involving color, which I don't know 100% if it's actually true, and I'm going to check it out. But anyway, apparently Einstein was doing an experiment with radioactive materials, and he was working with some technicians. And you know what a Geiger counter is?
Hmm.
Right. So he had a Geiger counter, and he was measuring the amount of radiation coming through a lead wall, which lead is supposed to, stop radiation. There was a radioactive something or another on the other side. So he was measuring with the Geiger counter. And they kept adding more and more layers of lead to the wall to try to eliminate the radiation from coming through the wall.
Right.
And as they were doing this, one of the technicians happened to walk by. So in between where he was sitting or standing with the Geiger counter and the lead wall, and where the other side of the radioactive. So the technician walked by, and as he walked by, the Geiger counter went to zero. So somehow or another, something happened as this fellow walked by that actually blocked the radiation from coming through. And he was quite astounded, and he couldn't figure out why this had happened. So he had the guy walk back again, and several times, and every time he walked by, sure enough, the Geiger counter went to zero. And he asked him, what have you got in your pockets? What are you carrying? and he had nothing special. He had a clipboard. But anyway, after finally, trying to figure it out, they realized that it was because he was wearing a yellow jumpsuit, a yellow protective outfit. And the color yellow somehow blocked the radiation from coming through. Anyway, as I said, I don't know 100% if this is true or not, but I thought that was really fascinating, that color, because it has a frequency, can somehow affect your environment, and specifically radioactive particles coming through. That's pretty powerful.
Well, in this new class that I'm doing, I've actually prefaced it with the psychology of color and the meanings of color, and how significant that is to how we feel with the colors that we look at.
Right. Yeah, it's interesting because they tried it with different colors. They tried it, with somebody, with yellow, with red and blue and purple and all these other things, and it didn't work. It was only yellow that seemed to do this block. So yellow.
Brilliant.
So,
yeah, it's so fascinating how it works. It was saying on some of them, the meaning of each color, but one of them made me smile was that they had done a test on the colors in a baby's room, and they discovered that if a room is painted yellow, a baby cries more.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh.
How extraordinary. And obviously the color goes through to all kinds of things, with what the color of walls in a hospital or on an aeroplane, and everything makes a difference to the ambience of the space dependent on the color.
Yeah. I was just going to say that kind of, in the same kind of a vein of who are you painting for? The commercial art that you see in some places is using a color palette that will, they hope, inspire you to shop more, or leave sooner. Like I think in McDonald's, for example, they use a lot of red and orange,
and yellow. Yeah.
And the idea is to get you in and out quickly. They don't want you hanging around, so that's partly why they use those colors, is to make you feel more sort of agitated, so you leave sooner.
So going back to our subject of who are we painting for? I think my feeling is really one should paint for oneself. That's how ultimately I feel about it, ultimately.
Right. Yeah.
And however that takes shape. I mean, it's lovely to do journaling, and a lot of people do journals, painted journals, which is fantastic. But to also set, a few targets and goals to achieve things, and to possibly be clear about why you want to paint. I actually did a video about why do you want to paint some time ago, about a year ago. What's the reason? What is it that's pushing you towards that form of creativity? And some people say I can never paint in a million years. The only thing I want to do is draw. Actually, they won't use color, or do sculpture or pottery or gardening or whatever it is, that they wouldn't even consider picking up a paintbrush and painting. Whereas, to some other people, it's quite a natural thing to want to do. So
I think the concept of art journaling, though, is something fairly recent, in the sense that I think, maybe when I was, and when I was growing up, and maybe when you were growing up, the idea of becoming a painter was to produce something at the end, a piece that you would put on your wall or something like that, as opposed to art journaling, which is strictly for yourself. It's not for, public consumption. And I think that part of creating art And the reason, is it's a fairly new concept, wouldn't you say? I don't know. I mean, maybe I'm wrong
Not
about
necessarily, no, because I think maybe the journaling has kind of turned the dial a little bit from sketchbook, and
uh,
you know, sketchbook, working on in a sketchbook is kind of fundamental, really.
yeah,
And all great masters, spend years and years and years
yeah,
doing sketches and have lots of sketchbooks. I remember I told you the story about me seeing Turner's little
yeah,
sketchbooks. And I think that has kind of been the foundation for it, really. And you don't necessarily show the sketches. I mean, a lot of artists use the journaling to practice different techniques and methods and, experimenting with
experiment.
different
Yeah.
ideas, yeah, in order to be able to then translate that into a painting.
Yes. Okay.
And
So
I
it's a
think,
practice
yeah,
exercise, wasn't it? Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's kind of like a practice run,
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
to,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, the thing that I've been doing today for this class, it's about, using your sketchbook to discover
Hmm.
what your colors, and then how you're going to use them, what it feels like, does it match what you feel like? And the more you practice, then when you come to do a big painting, well, I mean, we had this in the retreat in a way,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
we
Yeah.
did 3 days of practice, and then we moved on to hopefully embracing onto the painting what we'd learned in the practice. And I think journaling is about that. And there's nothing to stop you, if there's something really fabulous that comes up in the journal, to cut it out and frame it.
Yeah. But I
So
think journaling is also, the point of journaling is not to necessarily, I mean, it can be obviously useful as a way of discovering and experimenting and learning, to apply it to something else. But I think a lot of people don't use it that way. They just use it as a self-expression,
yeah,
just to, yeah, just for its own
but I
sake.
think I think it happens anyway. I don't think you can get away from um,
Mm.
self-exploration, even if they're just using it for that. There's processes going on, isn't there, in that person? And um there's a lot
It's like a
that's,
diary. It's
it's
like a,
like a
and
diary, yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
right. It's
and
not
and
meant to
I
be read other than
No,
you. Yeah.
exactly. But and it's also, self-reflection, that sometimes you might just want to do really crazy things in there, and sometimes you might do really neat and perfect and wonderful. In fact, going going through some of my old sketchbooks, some of them are quite frightening, of stuff that I've done. I'm looking back at sketchbooks I had like 10 years ago or 15 years ago. I'm thinking, oh my God, I must have been in a bit of a state then. For some of the things that I was doing and drawing and painting. Oh God. So yeah, I mean, that's like a journal, because I also, write journals, and I can look back on journals that I've had for years and years and years, and think, oh God, I haven't moved forward very much. I'm still writing today what I
Oh,
was writing when I was 20,
yeah.
And, God forbid anybody else should read those things. They're strictly for me.
Well, of course. Yeah. Yeah.
They might turn into, something absolutely amazing when I'm dead. But at the moment, they
The
stay under
collage
lock and
paper,
key.
joy.
Hmm?
Yeah. They're good for collage papers.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh dear. But
Yeah.
whatever which way, it releases it from yourself. The whole point of journaling or painting or whatever is that we release that creative energy,
Mhm.
good, bad, and the ugly. Sometimes it's absolutely fabulous, and sometimes it's absolutely dire, but you've got it out there. And I think that's the most important thing. So, you know, who are we painting for is, I think, to find our own peace of mind, to find our, you know, our contentment, our ourselves, really.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
I mean, yeah, I think
Well,
that's,
I think it's also probably a really good exercise, to paint for someone else, in a similar way that you were describing in terms of the
mm,
commercial,
yeah,
but it might be an exercise that forces you out of the normal way that you create
yeah,
to,
to something
put
else.
your,
Yeah, I mean, and
yeah.
I've done that myself with commissions.
Mhm.
And I have to say, the last commission I did, I absolutely hated doing it because it was the colors that I really don't use. It was they wanted a great big purple pink flower on a canvas that was like 120 centimeters. I don't know how big that is in inches, but anyway, it's big,
Yeah,
square.
right.
So
Yeah,
it
yeah.
was enormous. And she approached me from my at the exhibition last year and asked if I could do this picture for her. And that really I should have said no. But
Oh,
she was so excited, and she'd read some stuff about me and blah blah blah. So anyway, I said I would do it. So she gave me a picture of a cushion
mhm.
with the colors in it, and she wanted this picture. Anyway, I really, really struggled doing it. I mean, I did it, and it was ditto, ditto, nice. There was nothing wrong
Yeah,
with it.
yeah,
I just hated it. And then she sent me a picture of it in her house. And
yeah.
it looked wonderful in her room because all her room was lilac and
With
pinks and purples,
pink
and
and
it
purple.
it fitted perfectly in the room. But not in a million of years would I have done that for myself, you know.
Right. Yeah.
So yeah, it was a
So it was
very
a
good
good,
exercise
yeah.
in doing something that you really don't normally do.
Right. Yeah.
Oh dear.
Yeah.
So yeah, actually, again, with the class coming up, I've said, what are the colors that you lean towards? Because I'm a blue girl. I love blue.
Mm,
And then if you said to me, paint something in purple or paint
yeah.
something in, I don't know, pink,
Pink.
not
Pink.
colors
Yeah.
that I use, it would push me to
Mm,
do that. And
right.
that's a good thing. That's a good thing.
Yeah, that's what I meant. Yeah, it kind of
Yeah.
pushes you out of your comfort zone a little bit
Yeah.
or a
Yeah.
lot.
Or a lot.
Yeah.
Yes. Too much. That last one
Yeah.
was, I haven't done a commission since. I don't know, I'm not doing that again.
There you go.
I think another interesting subject is what to paint. A lot of
Mm,
people have that question. So maybe we can talk about that on the next podcast
yeah.
about
Yeah, that's
getting
good. That's a good one
inspiration on
too.
what to paint.
Right.
Um, but I think as far as who do you paint for, paint for yourself and
Yeah.
embrace yourself and find all the wonderful nuances there are about yourself because I think it's always lovely when you surprise yourself with
It
whatever you
is.
do. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I like that. And that's really creative. It's stepping out of the box and really going on an adventure about your own personality. And I love that. I think that's really cool. So,
Well, and it's an ever evolving exercise, because every time you do it,
mm,
something else comes up, something new, something different. And yeah, it's a journey of self-discovery, really. Um,
absolutely. Yeah, for
yeah,
sure.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so great. So you're going to be painting something this week. What have you got in mind?
Well, I was thinking of doing something similar to what we were just talking about, which is to do something completely different than what I would normally do. And I haven't quite figured out what that is yet, but I'm letting it sort of cogitate a little bit. But
Yeah,
yeah, with colors that I wouldn't normally use, because I think somehow or
okay.
another I need to push myself away from what I tend to do. And I think that would be good for me. So I'll
Okay.
let you know next week.
Okay, well, maybe doing this stuff that I've done with the masterclass will help you discover some
Yeah,
new colors
that
that
would be
you haven't
great. That
used.
would
And
be
I
great.
think
Yeah,
that
I
will
look
be
forward to
really interesting. Yeah, exactly.
one.
Great.
Good.
Good. Okay, well, I hope you have a good week. And
Yeah. When you,
if anyone's got any questions or would like to say why they paint, do leave do leave it in the comments, because it would be wonderful to read how you feel about who you paint for.
yeah,
And if you enjoyed the video, do give us a thumbs up, or the podcast, I should say, and subscribe if you would like some more. And that helps us and encourages YouTube to push us along the road, which would be great.
yeah,
And you can
brick
find
road.
all our
Yeah.
information in the information below in the description, if you want to go on an exploration of what else we do.
Yeah.
And that's great. So
All
nice to
right.
see you. Yeah, you take care. And
You too.
thank you very much, everybody, for listening and watching, and look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.
Okay. Have a wonderful day.